Leonard Fernandez, Publishing Next. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm really thankful that you asked me to come here and speak. It has been a great learning opportunity for me. I've been asked to speak for about 15 minutes, and I'll try and make it 15 minutes. Since books have language as one essential component, and since we not still come to a stage in the development of the human consciousness where we can have books without language in them, I decided to speak about language. All over the world, there is a sense of panic that the human language is disappearing. That languages are disappearing, but language itself has come to a stage which is definitely a stage of great crisis. Language happens to be an important stop in the process of human evolution. To put it very briefly, of the 1400 crore years of this whatever cosmos or Vishwa or whatever, of 450 crore years of the planetary system that we have, at least 5 lakh years we spent creating language. Probably the first time that animal that learned to stand on 2 instead of 4 and had a spine and was required to use sound to refer to something which is absent, which is away, and not just communicate with eyes, but use sound, use voice, though none of the voice organs are actually made for voicing, neither lips, nor teeth, nor tongue, nor throat. Language begins there. It's about 70,000 years back that humans made first meaningful sentence as such. And for the last 70,000 years, we have been communicating through language, externalizing our thoughts and so on. It's about 10,000 years back that seed came in our life in a big way. That the pastoral hunter communities turned to agrarian way of life. So, without any doubt, the invention that hands, the realization that hands can work free to use tools, and therefore making of tools, rock tools or whatever. Similarly, the discovery that human hands could actually generate fire, or at least keep fire alive, they are as important as the discovery that sound can be used to communicate. So the use of hands or tools, seed, language, these are some of the important things in human evolution. Now that particular stop in the process of evolution, language, seems to have come into a grave kind of danger today. There's an estimate that of the 7,000 languages, approximately 7,000 languages, there are debates whether these are 6,000 or 7,000, nobody really knows. Of these 7,000 languages, by the end of the 21st century, not more than 300 languages will be able to retain all their domains. So children's literature, knowledge books, autobiographies, biographies, different domains of languages. There will be about 2,000 languages surviving with words in them, but without really multiple domains that a language ought to have. It's a serious situation. If this situation continues, we cannot think of books or publishing at all. I would like to look at the Indian situation. India has, as of now, at least 600 living languages. Of those 6,000, that's about 10% of the capital which goes into the making of, global capital which goes into the making of books. I mean, leave aside the other industrial aspects of the book making, printing, paper, etc. So it's a very huge amount of capital that we have. The situation of these languages today needs some consideration from publishers as well. There was a time when none of these languages were written. You all know that the printing of books became quite popular in the 19th century, beginning of the 19th century. We have in Calcutta, the government press. In some other parts like Goa, there's a little earlier times when printing came in Karnataka and so on. But it's in the last 200 years. So only some of the Indian languages got printed. Which were these languages? Was there any head count done? Was there any logic behind having only some languages printed? The answer is no. The decisions were arbitrary and they came out of pure administrative convenience. Now, it was okay that some languages got printed, others did not get, because the other languages had managed without printing. Transgenerational transfer of knowledge was possible through oral means, and it is possible even now through oral means. But some languages got printed, and after independence, it is those languages alone that got states for themselves. India has linguistic states. When the Constitution of India was being drafted, a discussion took place for good 4 years as to which languages should be there, which should not be there, which should be the more important language or languages. That discussion remained unconcluded. All the discussions of the Constituent Assembly from 1946 to 1949 that got concluded, got translated in the form of articles of the Constitution. The ones that remained unconcluded got translated in the form of schedules. So this list of schedules in the list of languages in the 8th schedule really reflects the situation in the Constituent Assembly where no decision could be made. That our languages were already a kind of victim of history, colonial history, was very clear even in those years. The 8th schedule as of today has 22 languages. At that time, it had 14 languages. In 1961, after the schedule was formulated, say 10 years later, when the census was conducted, and 1961 census of language is a fairly exhaustive census. The census list gave the figure of 1652 mother tongues. Now, every mother tongue is not necessarily a language. There's a technical difference, but I will not get into that. But more or less it is a language. So out of these 1600, when people try to verify, they found that at least 1100 were languages. Because mother tongue names come up, the strange varieties. Of those 1100 languages, in 61, which were in existence in this country, in 1971 census, the list showed only 108. The 109th item was all others. Because at that time, this statistics was disclosed a few years later after the census was completed. So it was, the statistics came to us in 1976-77. In 1972, the Bangladesh war had happened. And because Bangladesh got split up from Pakistan on the issue of language, the government of India decided to introduce a cutoff point of 10,000. If more than 10,000 speak a language reportedly, then it is to be considered. Otherwise, it is to be kind of kept in some kind of abeyance, or if I am very fond of saying that this is a kind of aphasia imposed on those, a compulsory silence imposed on these languages. They were killed at one legal stroke. Are these languages still there? The ones which were mentioned in the 1961 census but which got silenced in 1971, are they still around in the country? Many of them are there, and many of them are actually producing literature. Many of them are moving from orality to writing. Now this move from orality to writing is invariably linked to move of a society from one kind of economy to another kind of economy. That I don't have to say to you. When a certain community decides to enter some kind of industrial productive way of life, then move from orality to writing takes place. They are doing this. In many places, little magazines come up. Writers, tribal writers, they claim that they are writers. They're proud of their books get circulated in their own community. I have seen this when I published a magazine in tribal language. The first issue was launched at some remote place, a village, less than a village, at the foot of a hill, and we had printed 1,000 copies, and we managed to sell 700 copies on that day. I had put a basket there, and the price was 10 rupees. It was a 48 pages printed magazine. When that evening I counted the currency notes that had come, I cried because I saw that all those notes were crumpled notes. They had lot of sweat on them. A person who cannot eat or feed his children, her children, wanted to buy a book because the book meant something to that person. It was the first time book in that language. Is anything being done to sustain these languages in our country? The answer is difficult to give. In the last 5-year plan, 11 5-year plan, a committee was appointed. I was chairing that committee. We prepared a report. It was accepted. The ministry accepted, planning commission accepted, some 400 crore rupees set aside. But the government could not, a scheme was created called Bharat Bhasha Vikas Yojana. It could not be implemented. The reason the government gave was they did not know where the languages are, how many there are. They said they did not have an official, authentic list of languages. So if there is no such, then how would they decide in government terms who the beneficiaries would be? That's a very bad word, but that's the word the government uses. So some of my friends and me, we decided we will go out and do a survey. So actually we are on to that survey now. And we have so far spotted 630 languages in this country. And that survey, People's Linguistic Survey, will start rolling out in 41 volumes from January next year. Now, do I blame government alone? Because of my political views, I do that. Do I blame parents who are moving to Western kind of education, moving their children to Western kind of education? Because of my class location, I do that. Do I blame bad writers for copying other writers elsewhere? Because I am a professional literary critic, I do that. But all these are very short-sighted ways of approaching the problem. It seems this language issue, decline of language, is not only Indian issue, it's a global issue. Now can we say that all the governments in the world are equally competent as the government of India? Obviously not. Some are not as, some are a little better. Not all countries teach their children in some foreign language. In Russia they don't do, in China they don't do so, in Spain they don't do so, in Germany they don't do so. There are many countries, there are more countries in the world where children are taught in their own languages than countries where children are taught in some other language. So these reasons are there, but there seems to be a slightly different reason as well, and I would like to present it to you. And that reason is like this. When in the process of evolution, language was evolved, the main reason for choosing voice to communicate was it was flexible. Eyes had a limited ability to communicate, though eyes are very honest to one's body. Eyes age with the body honestly, voice does not. You hear a friend over phone after 15 years and the voice sounds the same, as if the fellow has not grown at all. Voice is not our gift, it is a social, it's a community gift. And that's why the Chinese have a kind of voice which the Indonesians do not have. It's a community. It was chosen because it is flexible, it allows us to refer to things which are absent. I could say here in Goa that the apples in Kashmir this year have not been so good, and I have not seen Kashmir, you may not have seen Kashmir perhaps. Apples, perhaps we had the last apple last year and not in recent times. Or skiing in Switzerland is a wonderful pastime. I have not been to Switzerland, but I still can. So absent. Now absence not just related to space, but absence related to time. Human language through voice made it possible to contain the absences in time. Now from where the hell did time come into our consciousness? Other animals don't have the same consciousness of time. It comes from memory. Memory first conceptualizes time. We do not know if it is there or not. I mean, if we went outside this planet or this planetary system and try to look at our sense of time, it would all look absolutely ridiculous. But memory first conceptualizes time, imagines it to be there, and then tries to organize it. Now, memory, the human memory, is very peculiar. It goes on becoming fatter by the day, because the human brain allows the sensory perceptions to accumulate in such a way that they do not get washed out so fast, so rapidly. And when you have a multiplicity of sensory perceptions, you need taxonomies, you need classification, whether it's cosmic things or natural things, ecology, materials, or human experiences. So taxonomies grow, classifications grow. And when classifications grow, memory, which was till then individual, becomes a social thing. And there you then hand over knowledge to the next generation using memory. You create institutions which preserve that memory. So you create schools, colleges, and so on, or ashrams, or whatever, lyceums, and so on. You create books as well to do that. So books is, in a way, memory manifest. I mean, that would be a good scientific definition. Now, because of memory, the human language, because of the needs of memory, the human language learned to devise a past tense and a future tense. The future is not a real tense in language. It is the future tense. The future tense is a reflection of the past tense, because nobody has really experienced the future tense. One can only imagine it to be. One can take it for granted, but I cannot speak about the future because I've never been there. I visited Switzerland and Kashmir. From those other examples, I have not visited my future at all. I cannot, physically cannot. So the past tense is the mirror image of the future tense, is the mirror image of the past tense. That's how the linguistic structures are made. Today, the accumulation of memory in public institution of memory, accumulation of memory as a social being, as a social thing, impersonal thing, has required us to conceptualize time differently. I'll take a pause for half a minute here, and I will speak, but I will continue this line of thinking. All along the history of the beings, whenever there is excess of a certain practice for survival, that excess has led that particular species to adopt a different way of life. Hunting, gathering people had to have, when they wanted to have excess hunting, they had to engage other animals to do hunting for themselves. Therefore, the horse or whatever other animals you use. When this became in excess, then in order to feed those animals, you have to move to agriculture. Till then it was not necessary to turn, because what was being produced by nature in the surrounding area was enough. When you produce excess in agriculture, you have to move to industrial civilization. And therefore, when we produce memory in excess of need, we have to move to a different way of looking at what memory is doing. And that's where today languages all over the world are looking for a possibility where the past and the future and the present, or continuous past, continuous future, or in Sanskrit language there are five kinds of past tenses, and they're not adequate. And that's where we have invented, the human brain has invented the cyberspace. I'm not talking of computers, I'm talking of cyberspace as a concept, in which many tenses can collapse. Many tenses can collapse. All languages are bound to move to that kind of behavior. I'm not saying that all languages are going to get locked in the computer, but their structural formations will move fairly close to the cyberspace kind of seamless movement from tense to tense, and that's when that humans will never sacrifice language, because without language, the the spine supported biped animal cannot just live. Just as you will not be able to live without seed, or without fire, or without the tools. So this is a necessary stop in the evolution of the beings, and so language shall be there, but it will be in a different form. Now I come to the Indian languages and diversity, the point which I had left. What is the future of these languages? Indian languages. Those 630 that I have gone out and counted, or 1100 of your 1961 census, or hundreds that the government is so neglecting of water, or hundreds which people are speaking. They want to keep those languages alive. They're ready to give their lives. In Korkabari, for script, people are given their lives. What about these languages? The answer is simple. But very often we do not look at simple things simply. That's the last thing we look at. The computer science, I'm not talking of cyberspace, I'm talking of computer science, is based on the understanding of the world that the Greek language had. The Greek language distributed the world in terms of presences and absences. And there is an absolute difference between what is present and what is absent. This is because the way the Greeks understood what an image is, and so on. I will not get into all that history. Supposing there is another language which has a different take on what is absent and present. X is X and X is not all non-X. If instead of that, if there's a different take, supposing, I'm not an obscurantist, I'm not a Hindutva fellow or any such thing, but you have some Upanishadic saying like what is that, Purnamadam, Purnamidam, Purnat, Purnam. Zero, you take damn thing out of it and still it will be filled. There's a Sanskrit concept called kha, which is absence that is filled with all presence. Now, I don't care. Those people 2000 years back thought about this. But I do care that my languages in Jharkhand have no idea of tense. It's only present tense, and no past tense and no future tense. If there's a language with only present tense sentences, it is today more elastic, more flexible, because you can add anything, you can remove, you can make the present tense sentence sound past tense or future tense, and therefore that language will be more amenable for storing public memory, or what we call knowledge. Or if we had a scientist of great imagination, somebody like Panini or Chomsky or Einstein, or you name your own scientist. If we had a great scientist with great imagination, taking samples from all the 630 languages which are still there, one could actually devise a completely new basis for computer technology. And at that stage, this whole army of slaves, workers, daily wage workers in IT that we are so proudly producing today, and all the knowledge makers which are, people in the villages and so on, they can come together to produce a new way of treating languages, handling languages, understanding languages, and new way of treating technology, handling technology. I think then the Indian languages, not alone will the Indian languages gain dignity, but India also will be producer of knowledge and technology in a big way. Will the government understand this? Obviously not. Because I am the government advisor on these issues, and I know that the government will not understand it. However, if Indian publishers invest in these languages, and it's pretty cheap, of course, I don't expect a multinational publisher coming to my Bhili, Santali, my Gondi, my Kharwa language, my Banjara language. But if we do, possibly, because we have 600 of the world's 6,000 languages with us, and if we sit down, carefully analyze what is happening to language all over the world and languages in India, we possibly can, lead the world. So all that I am saying is that the book shall never die. And it's not a question of whether it should be digital or whether value addition has to be done by beautiful sketches. Books have been there in absolutely raw form, and people have worshipped those books. If there is redundancy, then a certain what the British called for one phase of their literature decadence. That decadence does set in. Aestheticism is, I love beautiful things. I am not against beautiful things. But only additional beauty is not going to save the language, which is the soul of the book. And if we looked at only the technology of book production, whether it is print, digital, cinema, all forms of language expression are bound to remain. When television came, everybody felt it is the end of cinema or it is the end of newspaper. But today, television is all talking about either cinema or Delhi mein kiska khoon hua in a newspaper. So digital e-books are not going to kill print books. But if language is not there, there shall neither be e-book nor the print book. And therefore, our debates must be oriented once again quite critically, meaningfully, and in a dedicated way. And we should not squander this great wealth surrounding us in this country. Are there any other countries? I am going to conclude in a minute. Are there such other countries? Yes. Indonesia has more languages than us, but Indonesia does not have as much technical manpower as we have, and certainly not as many publishers as we have. Then Papua New Guinea has more languages than Indonesia, but Papua New Guinea has not even made a simple count of the languages, and they just do not know what to do. They are looking at it as a law and order situation. Argentina had a comparable number, not as many as India, but there they resolved that there shall be only one language. All education will be only in a single language, and anything else is worthy of severe punishment in schools as well as by law. India is in the most fortunate situation, and I came here yesterday afternoon, and I must say to you, an old man, there's no need for me to tell you lies anymore, but I must, no, that was not intended. I'm tremendously impressed by the collective, the talent and the enterprise and intelligence that you have. I see publishers elsewhere, but mostly they were interested in my buying their books and so on. But here you're thinking, so in a concert, I think this forum should take up a futuristic program collectively, not just for what the NBT can do for books. The NBT cannot do anything, or the government cannot do anything. Take it from it. Or Pearson, or they cannot. Nobody. I think if we link with the people of this country, then we have a chance to do something which will allow the human language to survive, to get human languages into new phase, and that will be the next revolution in the evolution of the beings. Doctors tell me that in future the babies will have such large heads because the brain is growing inside. We are very young as a planetary system, as you know, as animal species in the 1400 crore years of the cosmos. We are very, very young, very young. We just made a beginning. Doctor friends tell me that the heads of the babies will be so large that babies, people will prefer that they are born outside the mother's body. That we must address that kind of situation in future. Or teachers tell me, professors tell me, you know, those who go to those Springer books and so on, that for transgenerational conduction of memory, there will be implant. Yeah, a simple chip will contain all the knowledge at all the universities. So why do you want the UGC to have a chairman that they don't have, and then waste so much money? We must now think of those times and look at these languages of India as the source and the relief for us in those times, and not look at them as some kind of lumber room, some kind of backyard thing and a developmental burden on our shoulders. If we turn there, then I think we can do something radical for publishing. Otherwise, we will be able to do a lot of aesthetic things for publishing, value addition, but we will not have changed the trade or the soul of publishing that it is, calling for, crying out. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much.
Do you have any questions for?
I just want to thank you for destabilizing the basic notions of all our lives, like literature, printing, publishing. And I was thinking about one suggestion to the whole forum, that is, which came to me while listening to you. That is, instead of these literary festivals we have, international and national, it's high time we have some sort of a festival of language or festival of, say, literature in some part of India which is not even a two-tier city. I would say a rural area, which can be a destabilizing effect on large scale on the existing bad traditions of celebrating ourselves in the publishing industry, which is Delhi centric, which is many things colonial. I just thank you and I propose this idea. Thanks.
Any other question?
See, 2011 census had language count. I wonder why didn't you mention that?
22 scheduled languages and 100 other languages which are spoken by more than 10,000. They are mentioned. Then there are about 300 languages listed in that census, but that statistic which may be close to 10,000, but that statistics is not disclosed still. And there is a list of 1644 languages with the census, which they say that people have somehow claimed, but they are hesitant. So they held several meetings. I was also part of the meeting, whether to disclose or not to disclose, and so on. Because that is the national fear. But my fear, I am an Indian, and of course I carry a passport, and But my fear is human. Language makes us human. Without language, no consciousness is not possible. Abstraction is not possible. Communication is not possible. And one government or several, I also went to UNESCO to advise them and so on. And they said we'll prepare a catalog of endangered languages. I said don't do that, because you'll scare off the people. Those who are left there in those languages, even they will give up speaking those languages. And they'll start setting up NGOs saying, "Meri language endangered hai, mujhe grant de do." But, I mean, it's poverty is world's #1 industry, I'm sorry. So, endangerment is now another kind of industry. We must make efforts. We must make efforts. Governments come and go. Language is far more permanent than nations and government. And the book industry is divine. Not industry, the book is divine. That's why there are at least 4 religions, major religions in the world that worship book. So long as those religions are there in the world, take it from me that the publishing industry does not have great, because those people are going to value books. They are going to tell their children कि ये book होता है बहुत अच्छा होता है, book खरीदो. English नहीं खरीदेंगे, German खरीदेंगे, French खरीदेंगे. Some book they will buy. But language is far more important because it contains wisdom of centuries. 2 seconds में देते. I was counting the number of words in the Himalayas. This I had mentioned in Bombay that for ice, snow. And they told me that they have so many, if when you are asleep and you hear snow fall, then it has one word. But if you are properly wakeful and then snow falls and you hear, it has another name. It's ecological knowledge. Great ecological wisdom is there in the languages. When the tsunami hit the Andamans, the tribals, nobody died from among the tribals. Everybody else, those who were appointed to protect them, they were also good people. After all, they too have families and so on. But tribals, because they understood how to read the sea. Because of these words. वो बो language वाली बोलने वाली औरत आपने पढ़ा होगा in the Andamans. And with her death, she was 85 when she died in 2010 January. And during the last few years of her life, she was talking to birds only because there was nobody else to talk to her in her language. When she died, a continuous line of wisdom of 65,000 years. Publishing must also be tuned to these huge stocks of wisdom that we have. Fortunately, we have this. And mind you, in the next century, history as a subject is not going to die. So when if we did not attend to these languages, in the next century, the professor of history, whether at Cambridge or whether at JNU, is going to sit down and write that the thinkers, the writers, the speakers and the publishers of this country allowed several hundred languages to disappear before their eyes. So we will be a Judas in future. Don't be that. Thank you.